Hospital research. The question from Chapter 4 states that I have been asked to determine how hospitals prepare and train volunteers, and how would I do this? So the first thing I'm going to do is clarify the research question, talk to the researcher. I am the researcher. Talk to the person who's made the request. So whether that's a hospital administrator or third party, if I'm a supervisor, if I'm working for a research company. But I would need to ask more questions just to understand what is the end goal out of this. Are they looking to, as a person looking to just understand like how frequently it's scheduled on a calendar? Are they trying to meet requirements for like badging and insurance, that kind of thing? Are they looking to just find a third party that does the training? So there's definitely a lot of questions that I would want to ask, and so that I know I'm have the full understanding of what the research question is and what the end goal is with the information that we're trying to obtain. The next thing would be designing the research. So data collection design, as far as the measurement instrument I would use would be a digital survey, possibly something like SurveyMonkey, but definitely something that's able to be done electronically on a web page or emailed to someone. And I would have to determine how long the surveys would be open, like what time period, are the surveys going to be available to complete for 2 weeks, 2 months, and that would be dependent on what the requester's timeline is as far as what they need the information for. And another key thing I would do in the data collection design is determining how long the survey would take to complete. And again, this is going to come back to what information is really truly needed from the research question, because if the requester is looking for a lot of really in-depth information, then I may need to have the survey a little bit longer. Otherwise, I may be able to condense questions into making it a really quick, 5-minute survey as opposed to a 30-minute survey. And next, I would look at the sampling design. The population size of hospitals, of course, I'm not going to do a census and try to survey every single hospital, because that's just impractical. My size would definitely be a sample, but it would depend, again, on some of the information obtained in clarifying that research question, as to whether or not I need to restrict that geographically or by hospital size and that kind of thing. But if it's only hospitals that treat more than a certain number of patients a day, then of course I'm going to reduce my sample size and make sure that I only am looking at that hospitals doing that volume. Another factor in sampling design would be if there's a difference in for-profit hospitals as opposed to non-profits, public versus, I shouldn't say public, but physician-owned or corporation-owned, if that makes a difference. And these are just things I wouldn't really know the answer to without having dug in earlier in clarifying the research question. Because I'm also not certain if all hospitals have volunteers, I would assume that some hospitals don't have volunteers for liability purposes, and I don't know which hospitals do have volunteers, don't have volunteers. I would look at using, where the source where my question's coming from to get a little bit of direction as far as some hospital to start with and contact information, and then do snowball sampling and basically look for that, look for the hospitals that I'm reaching out to help me find and pull in additional hospitals that also have volunteers. And that may be, some within the same organization. So, we've got corporations like Providence. They have multiple locations in multiple different states. So I may be able to reach out to Providence Hospital in my local area and then get contact information or have that passed on to the other facilities, or find out that all of the Providence-owned hospitals have the same policy and methodology for how they train their volunteers. Once I had my design, I would collect and prepare my data. So generating that survey, downloading the data after it's completed, reminding participants to take it, organize that, clean it up, make sure that any errors or glitches are cleaned up so that I could then analyze and interpret the data, looking for commonalities, and that would bring me to recording the insights and recommendations. So for my insights and recommendations, I would deliver them in person with whoever requested the information, and then I would also provide them a paper printout and a digital a digital copy in a PDF file of the information obtained and the recommendations. And that is how I would go about conducting that research. Nike sample group. So our question from chapter 5 gives us some information saying that Nike introduced glow-in-the-dark foamposite 1 Galaxy sneakers, and there were some issues with that and ended up having some events canceled. So the question here to me is, what sample group would I suggest for Nike to determine whether they should switch to online introductions or go ahead and continue with store introductions? Excuse me. Now, because this is a very specific group of people that are interested in this, I, for one, didn't even know that foamposite 1 Galaxy sneakers was a thing. And when I looked it up, I found that there's quite a lot of shoe fans, but there's also going to be a large population that is not going to be interested in glow-in-the-dark, fancy new releases. And so the people that would be attending those events potentially are going to be pretty small. Not small, but they're going to be pretty specific. Because of that, the sample group I would look to use as a non-probability purposive, and I would look to ask the question, are you interested in attending a new release, limited release introduction? Are you interested in attending that in person? Are you interested in doing it online? And let that first question of, are you interested in attending a event online? And then the second question, are you interested in attending an event in stores? Anyone that says no to both of those questions would be ruled out, because if they're not interested in attending with online or in the stores, there's no further information to ask from them. And so that's why I would look at purposive and get right to a sample group that is the target crowd, whether it's a crowd online or a crowd in stores.